Woodland Park, Colorado, Thanksgiving Day, 2018. The smell of cinnamon and sweet potatoes filled the air. A young mother stood in her cozy kitchen, preparing a quiet holiday dinner, her baby's laughter echoing softly through the house. It was meant to be a day of warmth, gratitude, and family, a moment of peace before the start of winter. But as evening fell, everything changed. Behind those closed doors, a scene unfolded that no one could have imagined. A trusted face, a simple game, and a sudden act of unthinkable violence. By the next morning, the small townhouse that once held laughter would become the center of a mystery that would grip an entire nation. A story of love, betrayal, and a chilling secret buried beneath the surface. What really happened inside Kelsey Berreth's home that Thanksgiving night? Kelsey Berreth was born on September 15th, 1989 in Washington State, and grew up in the lakeside town of Moses Lake. She was the eldest of two siblings and spent her childhood surrounded by open fields, animals, and endless skies. Life on her family's farm shaped her into a hardworking and disciplined young woman. More than anything, Kelsey loved flying. She dreamed of becoming a crop duster pilot, soaring above the same kind of field she grew up tending. After finishing high school, she turned that dream into reality by enrolling in a local aviation program. Her passion for flying was undeniable, and it soon led her to a job as a flight instructor in Washington. Students admired her patience and calm demeanor, traits that made her not only a skilled pilot, but also a trusted mentor. In May 2016, Kelsey decided to begin a new chapter of her life. She moved to Colorado, where she joined DOS Aviation in Pueblo in July 2017. There, she quickly became known for her kindness and professionalism. Colorado suited Kelsey well. She loved the mountains, the open air, and the quiet rhythm of life in small-town America. But soon, her heart led her in a new direction toward a man she met online. In 2016, through a dating site, Kelsey met Patrick Frazee, a 32-year-old cowboy from Florissant, Colorado. Patrick lived and worked on his family's 35-acre ranch, where he trained cattle dogs, shoed horses, and cared for livestock alongside his mother, Sheila Frazee. He was known locally as a capable horseman, someone who could manage the rough demands of ranch life with ease. Their connection grew quickly. Within months, they were engaged, and by October 2017, they welcomed a daughter, Kay. Kelsey hoped that starting a family would bring stability and commitment. So, she left her life in Washington behind to move closer to Patrick in Woodland Park. But from the start, things weren't as she had imagined. Kelsey had always been clear about one thing. She wanted a home where she and her daughter could feel safe and independent. Living with Patrick's mother on the ranch didn't feel right to her. Tensions had begun to surface between Kelsey and the Frazee family, and she chose to rent her own townhouse instead. It was cozy, just 20 meters from Patrick's ranch, and she built a quiet life there with baby Kay. Kelsey continued working and visiting Patrick on her days off, trying to hold on to the idea of a future together. She believed that one day they would rent a place of their own and become a proper family. But Patrick seemed content, living as he always had, detached, distant, and unwilling to commit. The relationship slowly began to erode. Kelsey grew frustrated and sad, unable to understand why the man she loved refused to take responsibility for their family. Still, she remained patient. She wanted to believe things could improve, especially for their daughter's sake. And so, she tried to hold on to the hope that the man she once trusted would finally step up and become the partner and father she needed him to be. Then came Thanksgiving Day. It was a bright, cold Thursday, the kind of day when families gathered around warm tables, sharing stories, laughter, and the comforting aroma of homemade food. For 29-year-old Kelsey Berreth, the morning began with joy. She baked cinnamon rolls in her kitchen, the scent filling her home, and played with her 1-year-old daughter, Kay. She had plans for a small, festive dinner later that evening, and even invited Patrick to join them. At 12:41 p.m., Kelsey sent Patrick a text message. Simple, thoughtful, and full of everyday warmth. I bought some sweet potatoes in case you wanted sweet potato casserole, but I forgot to get pecans. So, if you want some, get some. It was an ordinary message from a woman preparing a holiday meal, unaware that it would become one of the final traces of her life. Days later, when Kelsey's mother, Cheryl Berreth, realized she hadn't heard from her daughter, concern turned into dread. On December 2nd, 2018, Cheryl finally called the Woodland Park Police Department and requested a welfare check at her daughter's townhouse. When officers arrived, both of Kelsey's cars were parked outside. Inside, they found a home frozen in time. A half-finished batch of cinnamon rolls sat untouched on the counter. Her purse and keys were gone, and there was no sign of struggle. But there was also no sign of Kelsey. Her phone and her daughter's diaper bag were missing, suggesting she had gone somewhere. But where? That quiet home with its lingering scent of cinnamon and stillness became the starting point of one of Colorado's most haunting missing person cases. And the truth behind what really happened to Kelsey Berreth would soon reveal a story far darker than anyone could have imagined. That same afternoon, the police chief stood before the press, addressing the growing worry surrounding the young mother's disappearance. He outlined the early findings of the investigation. Kelsey had last been seen on November 22nd, Thanksgiving Day. Her employer confirmed that they received a text message from her phone on November 25th, stating she would not be coming to work the following week. But something about that message felt off. Cheryl knew her daughter. Kelsey was dependable, responsible, and deeply devoted to her baby. She would never simply vanish. Adding to the mystery, Kelsey's phone had pinged near Gooding, Idaho, on the same day that text was sent, November 25th at around 5:13 p.m. The distance between Idaho and Colorado raised serious questions. How could her phone be so far away when her cars and personal belongings were still at home in Woodland Park? Investigators executed search warrants on her townhouse and both of her vehicles. Nothing pointed to foul play, but nothing suggested she had left willingly either. The case was now officially being treated as a missing person investigation. When Cheryl addressed the public, her voice carried both strength and heartbreak. She described Kelsey as someone who wouldn't simply disappear. A woman devoted to her faith, her family, her friends, and her career. Cheryl and her family had created a Facebook page, Missing Mother Kelsey Berreth, to help spread her photo and bring attention to her case. They pleaded with the public to share information responsibly, avoiding speculation and rumors. Meanwhile, reporters pressed the police for answers. Why wasn't Patrick Frazee at the press conference? Was he cooperating with the investigation? The police confirmed that Patrick had been invited but did not attend. They added that Patrick was cooperating at this time and that there was no immediate evidence to suggest criminal activity. When asked whether Kelsey might have left town in one of the aircraft from her job as a flight instructor, investigators confirmed that all airplanes were accounted for. There was no sign she had flown anywhere. Her baby Kay was with her father Patrick. Despite these facts, something didn't add up. Friends and family emphasized that Kelsey had been excited about the holidays. She had no reason to run away. Her Thanksgiving message to Patrick, cheerful and routine, was among her last known communications before she disappeared. When investigators questioned Patrick directly, his explanation raised even more concern. He claimed that he and Kelsey had broken up the day before Thanksgiving. According to him, the relationship had ended peacefully. He said that on November 22nd, they met briefly in public so that Kelsey could hand over their daughter. After that, he said he never saw or heard from her again. But to those who knew Kelsey, her mother, her colleagues, and her friends, the story didn't make sense. She wasn't the kind of woman to vanish after baking cinnamon rolls and planning dinner when investigators questioned Patrick Frazee about the Thanksgiving text, the one about sweet potatoes and pecans. He admitted receiving it, but claimed he thought it was just a casual holiday invitation. To him, it seemed ordinary, but to detectives, something about that message didn't sit right. In the days following Thanksgiving, Patrick and Kelsey exchanged a few more messages and spoke briefly on the phone. According to Patrick, everything seemed normal. Kelsey was cheerful, in good spirits, and showed no sign of distress. But the police couldn't shake the feeling that his version of events didn't quite add up. There was one question that troubled the most. If Kelsey had truly broken off her engagement that week, why had she shown no sign of sadness or conflict when she spoke with her mother that same morning? Cheryl remembered her daughter as happy and relaxed. There had been no mention of a breakup. When confronted, Patrick offered an unsettling explanation. He told investigators that Kelsey had struggled with depression, even suggesting she'd had thoughts of self-harm. He claimed she might have been using drugs or checked herself into rehab, an excuse meant to explain her sudden disappearance. But Cheryl refused to believe any of it. Her daughter, she insisted, was not that kind of person. Kelsey was open with her family, and if something had been wrong, she would have confided in them. The accusations were unthinkable. Patrick didn't stop there. He began telling others that Kelsey had been seeing a therapist and battling addiction, trying to paint a picture of instability that could justify why she might have vanished. But those who truly knew her, friends, co-workers, and relatives, rejected this narrative completely. As police dug deeper, they turned to technology for answers. Kelsey's phone records became a crucial lead. Data showed that on November 25, 2018, 3 days after she was last seen, her phone pinged in Gooding, Idaho, nearly 800 meters away from her home in Colorado. The distance was shocking. How could her phone have traveled that far? Especially when her cars and personal belongings were still in Woodland Park. Then came a devastating discovery. On December 6, 2018, Kelsey's brother Clint and her mother Cheryl visited her townhouse once again, desperate for any clue. While searching the bathroom, Clint noticed something strange, a dark stain on the underside of the toilet. When he looked closer, he realized it was blood. They immediately contacted the authorities. Soon after, forensic tests confirmed the worst. The blood belonged to Kelsey Berreth. That single piece of evidence transformed the investigation from a missing person case into a homicide inquiry. All signs now pointed toward Patrick Frazee. Throughout the ordeal, Patrick's behavior remained cold and detached. He didn't attend a single press conference, not even the ones where Cheryl pleaded tearfully for help finding her daughter. He showed no interest in the search or the investigation's progress, and when confronted with inconsistencies in his story, he lied. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera would soon expose those lies. On Thanksgiving Day, the camera captured Patrick arriving at Kelsey's townhouse with her and baby Kay. Hours later, the same camera recorded him leaving alone. Yet Patrick's official statement claimed something entirely different, that he and Kelsey had met halfway between their homes for a brief handoff of their daughter. The footage proved that was false. Detectives began to close in. They analyzed Patrick's phone data and found something alarming. He had been in frequent contact with a woman in Gooding, Idaho, the same place where Kelsey's phone had last pinged. Her name was Crystal. She was a nurse and single mother of two, known in her community as responsible and soft-spoken. Years earlier, she had competed professionally in rodeo events. When the FBI joined the case and reached out to her, she initially denied knowing Patrick at all, but investigators had already traced calls between them, and data showed that she had met him on November 22nd, the day Kelsey vanished. Pressed further, Crystal began to unravel. At first, she told a vague story that she and Patrick owned a horse together and had met to discuss selling it, but that explanation didn't hold up under scrutiny. Eventually, she broke down and confessed the truth. Crystal and Patrick had met years earlier, back in 2006, when both were involved in the rodeo circuit. For Patrick, it was nothing more than a fleeting connection. For Crystal, it became something deeper. She fell in love with him, and despite his indifference, never truly let go. For over a decade, their paths would cross on and off. Patrick would drift in and out of her life, charming one moment, distant the next, and she always took him back, hoping that one day he would choose her. By 2018, that old relationship had been reignited. She thought she had a real chance at being with him. For years, she had harbored deep feelings for Patrick, feelings that had survived his indifference, his manipulation, and his sudden disappearances from her life. But this time felt different. Patrick seemed ready to let her in. At first, Crystal had no idea that Patrick was engaged or that he had a baby girl with his fiancé, Kelsey Berreth. When she found out, her world turned upside down. She was furious, betrayed, and jealous. But Patrick knew exactly how to handle her emotions. He told Crystal that his relationship with Kelsey was over, that it had been for a long time. He claimed Kelsey was an alcoholic, unstable, and violent, a woman unfit to raise their daughter, Kay. And then came the horrifying request. Patrick asked Crystal to help him get rid of Kelsey once and for all. Crystal didn't hesitate. In her mind, this was the man she loved, the man she'd do anything for. As a nurse, she had access to dangerous medications, and together, they began planning a series of failed and increasingly desperate murder attempts. The first attempt came in September 2018. Disguised as a friendly neighbor, Crystal knocked on Kelsey's door with a mug of coffee in hand, laced with poison. She smiled, handed it over, and left. But Kelsey never drank it. The cup sat untouched. When Patrick found out, he was furious. He bearded Crystal and demanded she try again. The second attempt followed shortly after. Patrick told her to bring a metal pipe and returned to Kelsey's townhouse. But when Crystal arrived, a barking dog startled her, and she fled in fear. Still, Patrick refused to stop. He devised a third plan, handing Crystal a baseball bat and instructing her to wait near Kelsey's home, ready to ambush her as she left. Once again, Crystal couldn't go through with it. She panicked when she saw a police car nearby and drove away. Patrick was done waiting. On Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd, 2018, he decided to handle it himself. Pretending everything was normal, he joined Kelsey for a quiet dinner at her townhouse. He played the role of the loving fiancé, smiling, calm, affectionate. Later that evening, he suggested they play a simple game, guessing the scents of different candles while blindfolded. Kelsey trusted him. As she stood there blindfolded, she leaned forward to smell the next candle. In that moment, Patrick raised a baseball bat and struck her on the head. She fell to the floor. He continued hitting her until he was certain she was dead. Hours later, he called Crystal. When she arrived 13 hours after the murder, she brought with her bleach, rubber gloves, protective coverings, and a full-body cleaning suit. What she walked into was a nightmare. Blood covered the walls, the floors, and even the child's toys. Crystal testified that Patrick told her to clean up the mess and to check the vent for a tooth, proof of how brutal the attack had been. She recalled seeing blood everywhere across baby toys, a stuffed animal, even what she believed was a Bible. Together, they collected items soaked in blood and burned them in a barrel outside. As she cleaned, Crystal later admitted she realized she was in deep trouble. She left faint traces of blood on purpose, hoping investigators would one day find them. When the house was spotless, Patrick drove her to his ranch. There, inside a metal trough, was Kelsey's body wrapped in plastic. Crystal watched as Patrick poured gasoline and motor oil over it and set it on fire. The flames burned through the night. As they stood by the fire, Patrick's mother, Sheila Frazee, briefly stepped onto the deck, glancing toward the flames, but saying nothing. Afterward, Crystal returned to Idaho, taking Kelsey's phone with her. She followed Patrick's instructions and sent text messages from it, making it look as though Kelsey was still alive. For weeks, investigators worked tirelessly to piece together the truth. When they finally recovered human remains and burned evidence from Patrick's ranch, the case shifted permanently from a missing person to a murder investigation. Just 1 month later, Patrick Frazee was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, solicitation to commit murder, and desecration of a corpse. In 2019, his trial began. The star witness was Crystal, who struck a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. Her account, combined with cell phone data, surveillance footage, and Patrick's own jailhouse communications, painted a chilling picture of premeditated murder. A police informant later revealed that Patrick had tried to send messages from jail, instructing others to kill key witnesses, including Cheryl Barth and Crystal herself. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict: guilty. In November 2019, Patrick Frazee was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 156 additional years for related charges. Crystal received a much lighter sentence, 3 years, later reduced to 18 months, and was released shortly after. Following Kelsey's murder, custody of baby Kay was awarded to Kelsey's parents, Cheryl and Daryl Barth, who continued to raise her on their family farm in Washington. Despite attempts by Patrick's mother, Sheila, to gain custody, the court ruled that Kay would remain with her grandparents in a stable and loving home. To this day, Patrick Frazee maintains his innocence. From behind bars, he continues to deny ever harming Kelsey. But the evidence, from Crystal's testimony to the physical proof found at the scene, tells a different story. Investigators believe the motive was rooted in control and custody. Patrick wanted full power over his daughter's future, and when Kelsey refused to comply, he turned to violence. Kelsey Berreth's story is one of love, trust, and betrayal. A young mother's life stolen by the very man she thought she could build a future with. May she be remembered not for the cruelty of her final moments, but for her warmth, courage, and devotion as a mother. Rest in peace, Kelsey. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.